Hello and welcome to The Issue. I'm Justin Chenette. In this episode, we're going to continue a series highlighting all the primary candidates running for District 1 U.S. Representative. This is The Issue. My guest is Democratic congressional candidate Mark Lawrence. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Justin. I appreciate you having me here.
Let's begin with the fundamental question. Why are you running for U.S. Representative?
Well, I think what's going to happen in Washington in the next 2 to 4 years is going to dramatically shape the next 20 to 40 years in this country in a way I don't think we've ever seen in our lifetimes. We are at such a tipping point in our country on so many different issues that I think we need strong leadership down in Washington that's going to give us a direction we haven't had in the past 8 years.
Okay. What makes you qualified for this position?
Well, I've done a variety of different things. I was in the state legislature, served for 12 years, was president of the state senate before I left, and for the last 5 years I've been district attorney in York County. And all those positions have exposed me to a great number of issues and a good understanding of what people in Maine are looking for right now out of Washington.
All right, let's turn to the specific issues. We'll start with the Iraq War. I have a quote from your website saying, "We cannot afford to continue this reckless course. We must push for withdrawal of our troops to begin immediately." Can you discuss your plan?
Sure. I mean, I think we got into the Iraq War based on a political decision. It was a political decision by the President, supported by the Congress. And I think we need to get out with a political decision in this country that we're not going to continue with the war in Iraq. Once we do that, I think we can plan on a timed withdrawal that achieves a variety of different strategies. And I think we have to have a number of different priorities. Protecting our troops as we withdraw, not leaving armament behind, but also working with the countries around Iraq to stabilize the situation politically so that they can find a stable form of government that will last after America withdraws.
Okay. What would you say to Republican critics that say pulling out too early will cause the region to collapse and fall to Islamic terrorists?
I would say that, first of all, Islamic terrorists are there because we are there. They're not there for any other reason. And they are there. They weren't there before to the extent they are now, and they're there because of a U.S. presence. And I think a U.S. presence is actually preventing a solution, because any solution that we try to push on the government of Iraq will ultimately be rejected by the people of Iraq. And I think we've got to progressively pull ourselves away from the situation in order that an internal solution comes forward and is accepted by the Iraqi people. No solution will be lasting unless it comes from the Iraqi people themselves.
Okay. Let's turn to the issue of immigration reform. Do you believe that we should secure our borders first and foremost?
I absolutely do. I just disagree with a lot of Republicans on how we should secure our borders. I've never believed that building a huge fence along our borders will make our borders secure. Any fence you build, somebody will find a way around it. Being a district attorney, I'm a big believer in the rule of law, and I believe that we need to legally secure our borders. We need to aggressively enforce our immigration laws. We need to take away the incentives and strictly enforce against businesses that are bringing people or creating an environment that allows people who come across the border to work here in this country illegally. Mm-hmm. People are coming from Mexico or other countries because the way of life that they have there is so much poorer than even the way of life they have here in this country as an illegal immigrant. But it takes somebody to enable that. It takes a business to enable that, to hire illegal immigrants to allow that to happen. So I think we got to crack down on those businesses.
Would you consider individuals that cross our border illegally criminals?
Oh yes, I mean I think that is definitely a crime against, it's an offense against the American public. And we need to, be very firm about the rule of law in this country. And I also think if you, allow illegal immigrants to be here, it's really an insult against those who have come here legally and gone through the means of legally staying here. Having said that, once we're able to legally close the borders and enforce our laws more effectively, I think you've got to deal with the problem with the millions and millions of illegal immigrants that are already here in this country.
Okay. Arguably, the #1 issue in this country right now is the economy, the state of our economy. And an economic recession is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, negative economic growth. What would you do as U.S. representative to help turn this economy around?
There's a couple of different things, and I always am surprised at Congress whenever they talk about, oh, we've got to stimulate the economy. They immediately do these tax cuts where give everybody $600 and they think that's going to stimulate the economy. I would have much rather seen a discussion in Congress about taking those funds and investing in our crumbling infrastructure. If we took that money, and it would have been hundreds of millions of dollars for a state like Maine, and said, you know, what bridges do we need repaired? What roads do we need repaired? What can we do to put people to work to repair our infrastructure? We not only would have kept that money in our economy here and put people in Maine to work, but we also would have given ourselves a legacy for the future, something physically we have, tangible we have for that investment.
Would you ever support an increase in taxes?
I mean, you know, I think you have to look at everything that's out there. I think before you look at that type of thing, we have to look at a couple of different things. And one is the dramatic growth of spending that has been in this Republican administration in Washington. There's been a huge growth in spending, and there hasn't been the revenues to pay for that spending. In fact, people think, you know, they've increased taxes or we're paying a lot to fight the war in Iraq. We're not actually paying to fight the war in Iraq. Who's going to be paying is you and your generation. We've actually indebted ourselves, borrowed the money to fight the war in Iraq, and it's going to be another generation that has to pay that back. To me, that's morally wrong. To fight a war, which I think was a wrong war to get into and very mistaken, one of the worst mistakes in the history of this country in foreign policy was the war in Iraq. And to ask not only to make that decision, but ask another generation to pay for it is morally wrong.
Would you support eliminating the tax breaks to companies that ship jobs overseas?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was some of the worst things that the Bush administration did. And it's been a trend over the last 30 years to do this, to give tax breaks to the very wealthiest people in this country, people making millions of dollars a year. And when you say that, it's hard for people in Saco or Biddeford or Kittery or Limerick to imagine, you know, somebody making $4 or $5 million a year. But then when you say this person is a hedge fund manager and they get to live in the Virgin Islands and they're only going to pay 3.5% tax, that's even a greater insult to people in this country who are working hard to make very modest wages.
What would you do to bring jobs here to Maine?
I think we've got to do a couple of different things. One thing is invest in infrastructure. I think that is something physically that improves your state for a business climate. Also, to invest in education. Education is the cornerstone of our economy right now. And the ability not only in K through 12, but in higher education, to have the things you need that companies are looking for. When I was in the legislature, I championed a bill called Jumpstart 2000. And the plan of Jumpstart 2000 was to create a research and development drive in the state of Maine. We were successful. It's led to many bond issues, much investment in research and development. The University of New England has been a great beneficiary of the investment in new focus on research and development. But it's a way to access, for a small state of Maine, the tens of billions of dollars that's spent by the federal government in all the other states to improve their economy through research and development. When we started out, Maine was actually 50th among all the states in our investment in research and development, and we were just about to be passed by Puerto Rico, if you could believe it. That's how low we were, and we've been able to turn that around and create a growing research and development market in technology in this state.